Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment when your silence speaks louder than every word you ever said, when the woman who once waited no longer does. When the man who once took you for granted suddenly starts to feel your absence in the pit of his chest. He'll replay your laughter, your softness, your energy, and realize too late it was never your presence that made him feel secure. It was your love. And now that love is gone. He's not just missing you. He's haunted by the version of himself that lost you. When a man goes silent, it's easy to assume he doesn't care. You start believing he's moved on, that his quiet is proof of his indifference. But often the truth is far more complex than what you see on the surface. When a man feels something deeply, he doesn't always express it with words. He retreats, he goes inward, he processes in silence because that's the only space where he feels safe enough to make sense of what's going on inside him. His silence doesn't always mean he's over you. Sometimes it means he's overwhelmed by what he feels for you. Men aren't naturally trained to deal with emotional vulnerability the way women are. They're taught to stay composed, to appear strong, to never let their emotions control them. So when a man finds himself in a situation where his heart is involved, where his pride and fear collide with love, he doesn't always know how to respond. Instead of expressing, he suppresses. Instead of reaching out, he pulls back. And while you're overanalyzing his silence, he's quietly battling his own internal storm. There are moments when he picks up his phone to text you, but stops halfway, not because he doesn't want to reach out, but because he doesn't know what to say that won't make him feel exposed. He replays memories in his head, the laughter, the connection, the little details that made your presence feel like home. He wonders if you think about him too, but rather than admitting that he still cares, he hides behind silence because that silence protects him from rejection. The paradox of male emotion is that silence often becomes the language of the heart. He may appear calm, distant, or detached, but inside there's a part of him that's constantly drawn back to you. He'll think of you when he's driving, when a song comes on, when something reminds him of your habits, your voice, your smile. He'll brush those moments away, tell himself it's just nostalgia, but deep down he knows it's something more. It's longing. And here's the part that most people misunderstand. When a man truly cares, he often believes that giving you space is an act of love. He tells himself, if she wants me, she'll reach out. If she's happy, I shouldn't interfere. In his mind, stepping back isn't rejection. It's respect. He doesn't realize that his silence may be breaking you in ways he never intended. When a man is secretly waiting for you, it's rarely about grand gestures or public declarations. It's hidden in the quiet moments, the small reactions, the subtle ways he still stays connected to your world. Even when he's pretending he's moved on, you might think he's forgotten, that your chapter has closed in his story. But in reality, he's still reading the same lines over and over in his mind. He notices everything even when you think he's not looking. Because when a man still has feelings for you, observation becomes his way of staying close without revealing his heart. He'll scroll through your profile not just to see your photos, but to feel the atmosphere of your life. The confidence in your eyes, the light in your smile, the tone of your words. He won't like the post, won't comment, won't leave a trace, but he'll replay it in his mind because men are not as detached as they appear. They may not express their emotions outwardly, but internally they're constantly processing, remembering, and comparing. Men often operate from a place of logic, but love dismantles logic. So when he's secretly waiting for you, he tries to rationalize it. He'll tell himself it's just curiosity, that he's simply checking in. But what he's really doing is searching for signs, for meaning, for any indication that you might still care. Every sign of your healing forces him to confront his own stillness. And that's when he begins to understand that maybe he's the one who hasn't moved forward. Maybe he's the one still stuck in the moment when things fell apart. And that realization keeps him emotionally tethered to you. He doesn't realize that by paying attention, he's feeding the very attachment he's trying to suppress. Because every time he observes your growth, your glow, your peace, he's reminded that his silence didn't erase his feelings. It just buried them deeper. Pride is one of those emotions that hides in plain sight. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand attention. It quietly dictates how someone behaves, especially when they're hurt, confused, or deeply in love. For many men, pride is not just an emotion, it's a shield. It's something they've learned to wear since childhood. Society often teaches men that showing emotion is a sign of weakness, that tears make them less strong, that vulnerability is something to be ashamed of. So instead of learning how to express their hearts, they learn how to hide them. Pride becomes the mask they wear to survive in a world that rewards control but punishes vulnerability. When a man truly cares for someone, That pride often clashes with his feelings. He might want to open up, to say how much he misses you, to admit that he's hurting, but pride whispers, don't do it. Stay silent. You'll look weak. And so he doesn't speak. He acts distant, cold, or indifferent, not because he doesn't feel, but because he feels too much. The more he cares, the more afraid he becomes of losing his image of strength. He mistakes emotional expression for weakness, not realizing that his silence is slowly building a wall between him and the person he loves. Inside that silence isn't peace, it's chaos. His thoughts become a battlefield. He replays moments, arguments, memories, wondering where things went wrong, but he doesn't say a word. To his friends, he's calm, composed, maybe even joking. But alone, when everything quiets down, that's when the truth starts echoing in his mind. He starts feeling the weight of every unspoken word, every moment he could have chosen vulnerability, but chose pride instead. And that's the part most people never see. The man behind the mask. The one who scrolls through old photos, rereads messages, hesitates to reach out because he's terrified of rejection. Pride tells him that reaching out means surrendering. That saying, I miss you, means losing control. So he convinces himself it's better to stay silent. He lies to himself, saying, I'm over it, even when every fiber of his being knows he's not. He distracts himself with work, hobbies, or other people, but the emptiness doesn't go away. It just hides under layers of routine and denial. There's a loneliness that comes with pride. At first, it feels like protection. It gives him a sense of control, like he's the one deciding the terms. But over time, that same pride isolates him. It turns warmth into coldness, love into regret. He starts realizing that the silence he once thought was strength has now become his prison. Because pride can protect you from pain, but it can also protect you from love. And in trying to shield himself, he ends up shutting out the very connection he craves. When a man says he's fine, what he really means is that he's trying not to fall apart. When he says, it's whatever, he's hiding a storm that he doesn't know how to calm. He thinks being stoic makes him strong. But true strength isn't about pretending not to feel. It's about facing those feelings head on. The tragedy is that pride often wins that battle. It convinces him to stay silent until the moment passes, until the woman he loves learns to stop waiting. And by the time he realizes what he's lost, it's too late. Yet, deep down, he's not over her. He's over the version of himself that didn't know how to love properly. He's over the immaturity, the ego, the fear that stopped him from being vulnerable. But that doesn't mean his feelings are gone. They've just transformed. They live inside him as quiet reminders, as what-ifs, as moments he can't relive but can't forget. In truth, pride is never really strength. It's fear dressed as control. It's the voice that says, don't get hurt again. When the heart is screaming, I just want to be understood. And until a man learns to lower that armor and face his emotions honestly, he will keep mistaking isolation for independence. He will keep telling himself he's fine while carrying the weight of everything left unsaid. Because no matter how strong he looks on the outside, every man who's ever loved deeply knows pride may protect your heart, but it can also break it. Pride is a quiet but powerful force that shapes how a person lives, reacts, and loves. It doesn't announce itself loudly. Instead, it works subtly in the background, influencing choices, silencing emotions, and often creating distance where connection is needed most. For many men, pride becomes a way of surviving in a world that has conditioned them to believe vulnerability equals weakness. From a young age, they're told not to cry, not to show fear, not to express pain. Over time, this message turns into an emotional cage. They grow up believing that being strong means being silent and that love or openness somehow lessens their worth. So, pride becomes their emotional armor, invisible, yet heavy enough to keep them guarded. When a man truly loves someone, this armor doesn't just protect him, it also imprisons him. The more deeply he feels, the harder it becomes for him to express it. He wants to reach out, to say he misses her, to admit his mistakes. But that voice of pride whispers that showing emotion will make him look weak. So he holds it in. He hides behind calm expressions, cold words, and detached behavior. What looks like indifference is often fear. Fear of being seen, fear of being rejected, fear of losing control. The irony is that his silence, meant to protect his heart, becomes the very thing that causes him pain. Inside, he isn't at peace. His mind becomes a constant loop of memories. The sound of her laughter, the last conversation they had, the things he wishes he had said but didn't. He scrolls through her photos, reads old messages, and imagines what it would feel like to talk again. But instead of acting on those feelings, he convinces himself that silence is strength, that not reaching out proves he's moved on, that keeping his emotions hidden makes him powerful. Yet every night, when the world goes quiet, His thoughts grow louder. He starts to feel the emptiness behind that illusion of strength. To his friends, he seems fine, laughing, working, keeping busy. But his calm exterior hides a storm of regret and longing. He tells himself stories to survive, that she's better off without him, that he doesn't care, that he's too busy to think about it. But those are lies pride tells to avoid the truth. The truth is that he still feels her presence in his absence. He still wonders if she misses him. He still replays the moments when he could have chosen love over ego, but didn't. Over time, pride's protection turns into punishment. The wall he built to keep pain away now keeps love out. What once made him feel strong now makes him lonely. Pride slowly transforms from a shield into a prison cell. It keeps him isolated, disconnected, and silently aching for what he lost. Because pride can protect you from temporary pain, but it can also rob you of lasting happiness. It teaches you to win arguments, but lose relationships. It keeps you from apologizing, even when your heart is breaking to be understood. When he says he's fine, it's rarely true. It's a mask, a way to hide the emotional chaos underneath. He doesn't know how to translate the storm inside him into words, so he keeps pretending that he's in control. But control without connection is emptiness. He might think silence shows power, but real strength comes from the courage to be honest, to admit that you care, to say that you're sorry, to risk being misunderstood. Pride, however, rarely lets that happen. It convinces him that being vulnerable is losing, when in truth it's the only way to win back peace. By the time he realizes this, the damage is often done. The woman he pushed away has learned to let go. She has stopped waiting, and he's left standing in the silence he created, stronger in appearance, weaker in spirit. He tells himself he's over her, but what he's really over is the version of himself that was too scared to love properly. His feelings don't disappear, they evolve into lessons, into reflections, into quiet what-ifs that linger for years. Pride is not strength, it's fear pretending to be strength. It's the voice that says, don't show emotion, when the heart is begging to be seen. It's a survival mechanism that outlives its purpose, turning men into prisoners of their own restraint. True strength isn't in holding back, it's in letting go. It's in saying what you feel before silence becomes regret. Because pride might protect your ego, but it can't protect your heart. In the end, the strongest men aren't the ones who stay silent. They're the ones who have the courage to feel, to speak, and to love without fear. He starts to wonder why it feels heavier now, why the days seem longer, why the world feels a little emptier. Because when you stop chasing, you stop feeding the illusion that he was the center of your world. And that shift forces him to look at himself. Your silence doesn't push him away, it pulls him in. Because it reminds him of something he can't control: your independence. When you stop trying to prove your worth, you become the woman he can't forget. The woman who once waited has become the woman who chooses herself. And that evolution shakes something deep inside him. Because every man is drawn to the kind of woman who can walk away gracefully. The quiet confidence you radiate becomes the mirror he never wanted to look into. In the end, love isn't about who tries the hardest to be seen or who chases the longest. It's about who learns, who evolves, and who grows wiser through the experience. There comes a point when you realize that convincing someone of your value isn't love, it's struggle. Real love never needs convincing. It recognizes, it honors, and it chooses you without hesitation. When you finally stop explaining your worth to someone who never saw it, you begin to reclaim all the energy you were pouring into proving yourself. You stop begging to be understood and start standing in your truth. That moment marks the beginning of peace, not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about yourself more deeply than ever before. When a woman pulls back her energy, it's not about revenge or pride, it's about self-respect. It's the quiet recognition that love should feel reciprocal, not exhausting. It's realizing that chasing someone who only responds to your effort is not love, it's imbalance. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you stop bleeding energy into something that no longer feeds your soul. The woman who once overgave, who tried to hold everything together, finally chooses herself. She stops trying to be enough for someone who never realized she already was. To the man who once needed constant attention to feel secure, her silence feels confusing. He may think she's being cold or distant, but what he doesn't understand is that her silence isn't punishment. It's transformation. It's her rising out of need and stepping into worth. It's her choosing peace over pursuit, clarity over chaos, and dignity over desperation. Her silence is not anger, it's acceptance. It's the sound of a woman who has finally stopped explaining what she deserves. When she stops chasing, she doesn't lose him. She stops losing herself. She no longer defines her happiness by his attention, nor does she wait for his validation to feel loved. She finds fulfillment within, in the quiet moments where she used to feel empty. That's when her energy shifts. The same energy she once used to hold someone else close now fuels her own growth, her passions, her healing, and that transformation is magnetic. The woman who once begged to be noticed becomes the woman who commands attention effortlessly, not because she's trying to, but because confidence and self-worth have a vibration that others can't ignore. The world begins to respond differently to her. Even the man who took her for granted starts to feel the void she left behind. The laughter he once heard every day now echoes in his memory. The messages he once ignored no longer arrive. The warmth he once felt without effort is gone. He starts to realize that her silence has a gravity of its own. It pulls at his thoughts, it lingers in his heart, and it reminds him of everything he thought he could replace but can't. Because a woman's presence is powerful, but her absence, when chosen from strength, is even more powerful. In her quiet strength, she no longer seeks closure from him. She gives it to herself. She forgives not for him, but to release the weight that once held her back. She learns that healing isn't forgetting. It's remembering without pain. It's knowing she did her best and still choosing to walk away with grace. The peace that comes from letting go is not emptiness, it's freedom. It's the deep calm that comes when you stop fighting for something that's already fighting against you. The moment she remembers her worth, everything changes. She no longer feels the need to chase love because she becomes love. Her energy, her confidence, her calm, all of it radiates from within. She attracts people who see her clearly because she finally sees herself clearly. She stops shrinking to fit into someone else's life and starts expanding into her own. And the world, including him, feels it. They feel the shift in her energy, the quiet certainty that replaces her old doubts. They see the glow that comes from a woman who's no longer chasing validation, but living her truth. Her silence becomes her strength, her boundaries become her peace, and her self-respect becomes her power. In the end, the message is simple but profound. Love isn't about proving your worth to someone blind to it. It's about remembering that your worth was never dependent on their recognition. When you stop chasing what doesn't align with your peace, you make room for what's meant to stay. You rise not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Sometimes the greatest love story you can ever live is the one where you finally choose yourself. And when you rise in that kind of strength, the world, including the one who once underestimated you, can't help but feel your absence and remember your worth.